Welcome everybody to another episode of UFO Man Live. My name is Tim, or UFO Man, and I am here tonight with my co-host and best friend, Tommy Highway.
Hey folks, I'm Tommy Highway. Very glad to be here this evening. We've got a great show for you. We're going to talk about all kinds of stuff, past and present. We're going to blow you away. And Tim, my brother, as always, thank you for having me.
You're more than welcome. But before we start, we're going to start with a video clip. Here we go. UFO Man is a participant in Contact in the Desert UFO Conference, June 25th through the 28th.
When you start to ask the question, it unfolds the fabric of space itself, how it's made. What is it made of?
Not alone in this universe. We never have been. Alien intelligences have cohabited with us on this planet for millions of years.
We inherited the obsession from the Anunnaki. Anyone that still thinks that we're the ones that are obsessed with gold does not know enough about the true history of our species, how we came to be here, and the conditions that brought us here.
We are not unique in this universe. Extraterrestrials do exist. We are, so to say, the copies of them.
Okay. All right, Tommy, you're muted.
Outstanding. Very, very nice commercial. Very nice ad right there, folks. We're going to be there. The channel's going to be there. You're all going to be represented, and should really do a lot for. I think that not just the channel, but the cause in general. Right. We're going to have featured video content from the channel. We're also going to have an interview, I guess, of me in the main page of the virtual conference site, which is contactinthedesert.com. If you need to get a virtual pass to the 25th through the 28th, you can go to contactinthedesert.com and pick up your virtual passes. Otherwise, if you don't want to pay for a pass, there will be content available that is unpaid for that you can access during the conference. So please feel free to join us. And we'll leave a link in the description below. Yes, we will. Okay, Tommy, take it away. Fantastic. Well, folks, I'll tell you, we are in a very unique point in time right now. What do you mean by that, Tommy? What I mean by that is we actually have more and more video coming out of the United States military, coming from the Pentagon or wherever it's coming from. And the Pentagon, for once, finally, in our lifetime, is no longer in completely deny it to, pry it out of our dead hands kind of a thing. In other words, they're coming forward, folks, and they're telling us that, hey, this video is authentic. These things are real, and we don't know what they are. Now, this is a complete contrast into what we've been seeing over the last, several decades anyway, certainly all of my lifetime, where any kind of UFO sighting or anything like that was always dismissed as, the old joke of swamp gas or something similar, or this person is just mentally unstable and things of that nature. And they would almost get to the point where they would, let's say, tarnish the reputation of anybody that would or was brave enough to come forward, with their sighting. Well, folks, things have changed. However, what we want to do right now is actually go back and visit a golden oldie, because this is just another example of, I should say, yet another example of interaction between a UFO and the United States military, only this one has a twist, okay? I'm going to go ahead and read this off for you, folks. It's near the U.S.-Canadian border. U.S. Air Defense Command noticed a blip in the radar where it shouldn't have been. And again, this was in November 23rd of 1953. They noticed that there was an unidentified object in restricted airspace over Lake Superior.
not far from Sioux Locks, the Great Lakes' most vital commercial gateway. In other words, it's a major port. An F-89C Scorpion jet from the Truax Air Force Base in Madison, Wisconsin, took off from nearby Kinross Air Force Base to investigate, with 2 crew members on board. First Lieutenant Felix Moncla, who had clocked 811 flying hours, including 121 in similar aircraft, took the pilot's seat, while the second Lieutenant Robert Wilson was observing the radar. In other words, Mr. Robert Wilson, was actually the back seater of this aircraft. So we've got 2 pilots here, folks. one military aircraft that was dispatched because a blip showed up on radar within restricted airspace. In 1953, excuse me, you have to understand the biggest fear that the United States had at that point was, of course, the Soviet Union, the Cold War, and all of that. And I mean, we were absolutely just paranoid with Russia at this particular point in time. Unfortunately, these 2 men would not return from their intercept mission. Now, see what followed, according to Donald Kehoe, former Marine Corps naval aviator and UFO researcher, who wrote about this incident in his 1955 book, The Flying Saucer Conspiracy, was one of the strangest cases on record. So in other words, we've got an aviator here, a former naval aviator that became a ufologist because he'd seen things out there himself, and he also wanted to get to the bottom of it. Does that sound like a familiar to you at all there, Tim?
Yes, it does. It sounds like the Fred Valentich case where he was pursuing a disc and disappeared.
Well, it's the reason that we all got into ufology, because we wanted to get to the bottom of something that we personally experienced. And apparently this gentleman did as well, and that's why he wrote the book. But
right.
It goes on to say, once airborne, Lieutenant Wilson had difficulty tracking the unknown object, which kept changing course. So with ground control directing the aviators over the radio, the Scorpion gave chase. The jet, traveling at 500 miles per hour, pursued the object for 30 minutes, gradually closing in. So again, we've got one of those stories where we've got a radar track on something. We know that we have that. We have records that happened, okay? We've got records of this fighter jet being dispatched to identify whatever this blip was on the radar. And again, we have a record of the aircraft leaving the inventory, okay? The aircraft had a serial number on it, just like everything else government. And we lost the serial number. It's a big deal. On the ground, the radar operator guided the jet down from 25,000 feet to 7,000 feet, watching one blip chase the other across the radar screen. Gradually, the jet caught up to the unknown object about 70 miles off of Keweenaw Point in upper Michigan at an altitude of 8,000 feet, approximately 160 miles northwest of Sioux Locks. So they actually dispatched this aircraft, this fighter jet, two people inside, a pilot and a radar operator. One of the best jets we had at the time in 1953. We had a radar track on an object. We dispatched these people. Now, what happened? Okay, at the point that the 2 radar blips converged into one, or locked together, as Kehoe would put it later, and then, according to the official accident report from the military, the radar return from the F-89 simply disappeared from the GCI, Ground Controlled Interception Radar. Okay, so all of a sudden, these 2 blips, we've got one unknown, we've got one known, a U.S., again, Air Force jet flying. They know exactly where this aircraft is. They're tracking it all over their radars, and I'm sure there was more than one track on it. All right. Once these 2 blips converged, the F-89 jet was gone. It was no longer present, but the original blip was still there. Now, since, again, they knew exactly where this aircraft stopped its track at on radar, they know that. So the United States Air Force, United States Coast Guard, and the Canadian Air Force conducted an extensive search and rescue effort, and no wreckage or sign of the pilots was ever found. Again, even though they knew where to look, and they had virtually two different militaries' assets there in the water, boats, ships, planes, all that stuff, looking for wreckage from this particular aircraft, None of it was ever found. Now, I'm sure you've seen the photo there of the F-89 jet. This is not a small thing. It is not a small aircraft. And when it hit the water, I mean, you'd have to believe that there would be something. Something would float to the top, some wiring, some insulation. I mean, there are all kinds of things that on board that aircraft that are probably going to float. Yet they found nothing, not a trace of these two aviators. Tim, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, they found absolutely nothing. In fact, many square miles were searched by several different agencies, not just the United States, Canada, and what was it, the Coast Guard searched as well.
Correct.
And they couldn't find anything, not on the surface of the water, not washing up on shore, nothing. So this just goes to show that it's another case of a missing aircraft, 2 airmen after chasing a UFO. And there was a plaque that was put up in dedication to Moncla. This is it here. In loving memory of Jean Felix Eugene Moncla, Jr., First Lieutenant, United States Air Force, born October 21st, 1926, disappeared November 23rd, 1953. So he was only 37, intercepting a UFO over Canadian border as a pilot of an F-89C jet plane, which is this one. And you can see it's a 2-seater, just like the Hornet was that David Fravor flew, which was also a 2-seater. So, yeah, for 2 people to go missing and an entire aircraft, I would assume that it's most likely some type of abduction.
Well, the interesting thing about the entire story, I mean, what I find interesting, at least if you look at this in terms of the official statement back in 1953, and again, the government's attitude toward just total deniability, all right? It's interesting how these 2 guys were lost in a training accident, isn't it? It's just funny how training accident, when you hear training accident at this point from the United States military, you can almost always bet your bottom dollar that it didn't mean training accident. It meant there was something fishy going on, or they were into something and someone died. And that's, you know, that's always been the MO of the United States government anyway.
Well, it's kind of like what was it, Flight 9, and there were, what, 8 or 9 planes? They went missing.
Oh, you mean Flight 13?
Yeah, maybe
Flight 18, or what is it? What am I trying to say here?
Well, you know, it was a training mission, and they, like 8 or 9 planes went missing over the Bermuda Triangle. Now that was always attributed to the Bermuda Triangle, but maybe it was an abduction of sorts. Because if you think about the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, when that came out, they insinuated that the planes had been returned by alien beings.
Right. Yep.
So perhaps they were taken. But why did they take the trainees and not the skilled pilots?
Well, that's a great question. But I mean, at this point, these guys probably, I mean, at 811 hours or so, that probably isn't a whole lot for this guy to be in that particular jet. But then again, I mean, you know, these are military aviators, and they know what they're doing. They're very well trained and all of that. And you got to believe that they make flight like that, and you know, in their sleep, no problem. But for whatever reason, these guys didn't come back. And again, no wreckage was found, and that's what really blows my mind about the whole thing. I mean, you guys didn't find so much as a matchbook. Okay, I mean, nothing. How can that possibly be?
Right. Just like Fred Valentich, nothing was found in his plane either, except they said they found a cowling, but the cowling was actually not necessarily related to his plane because it didn't have his call letters on it.
Right, exactly. And it's Flight 19 that we were talking about, those torpedo bombers.
Flight 19, yes. I stand corrected.
They disappeared without a trace. They also had one of those observer planes that's actually, one of those flying boats, basically. It's a seaplane. And
right.
it went looking for them, and it came up missing too. And that's what this thing does. Its whole deal is navigation. So how the heck did it get lost? Again, without a trace, no radio call, no anything. I mean, what's going on here? what's going on here? Why didn't these guys over the Great Lakes, why didn't they have a distress call or something like that? I'll tell you why. Because whatever happened to them happened so fast, they didn't have time to react.
Right. There have been a lot of cases reported over the years of UFOs chasing planes, helicopters, things of that nature, but there has never really been unclassified data out there insinuating that they've taken craft. And I kind of wonder why we actually have the report of the Moncla event and the Fred Valentich one, because everything else has been withheld from us. Mm-hmm. It's almost like they don't want us to know that they're aggressive, because if they have an aggressive stance and they're taking our aircraft, then the chances are that we as a public would panic. So maybe that's why they're keeping it from us. I don't know.
Well, we've got people that have panicked over our current situation to the point where they've been social distancing in their cars. So, you know, you got to figure those are the kinds of people right there that are not going to be able to handle this information.
Pacific Rules in the chat says, no, that's not what she said. She said, or they said, I want to be abducted. I would say be careful what you wish for, because you never know which race is going to abduct you and what their intentions are. I'd hate to find out that you're going to become food.
It's normally not a wonderful experience for those people out there that have claimed to had the experience. You know, most of those people don't come out of the experience smiling and things of that nature. They feel almost like, well, we've seen reports where they've actually stated where they feel violated and things like that. And I can understand that. I mean, if someone's coming in and completely disregarding your own free will, you know, that's pretty wild for most humans.
Dom R says maybe an exchange of technology without the pilot's consent. Yeah, that could be.
Could be.
Let's see here. Who else is in the chat? Well, I want to welcome everybody in the chat. Pacific Rules, Harry Ball, System Failure 2, Dom R, 13 Cool, 11. And everyone else I've seen in there, welcome. Okay, we're going to get on. We're going to move on now. Thank you, Tommy, for your presentation. We're moving on to our UFO video review for the week of 5/15/2021. So here we go. Can you hear it? Good.
Up in the sky, pretty high up, above one of the palm trees in the video, you see a large shiny object come into the picture, and it goes straight down after going sideways, and then goes into some sort of a loop engine, just disappears. You know, sometimes you start thinking you've seen just about everything, and then something.
I want to say one thing about this video. A friend of ours by the name of Stephen Barone at UFOs Over Vegas filmed this, and what it's doing is going down by the palm tree, doing a loop, and then disappearing. What he's doing in the video is reversing it and forwarding it so you can see how it moves. So when you see it go backwards, it's not the actual flight path. The actual flight path is it going downwards, doing the loop, and then flying off to the right. Okay, go back to the video now.
If I may real quick, Tim.
Yeah.
Listen, folks, we know that the gentleman that shot this very well. We know him personally. Super credible, super good guy. You know, really, we couldn't be getting this from a better source, just to let you know that.
Right.
It's definitely something new. And the distance between me and where this thing happened is easily 15 to 20 miles.
He said it's 15 to 20 miles away. Now, when I put this video out on the channel, all I did was zoom in so you could see it better. He said from the source of his camera, it was 15.
In the
Hold on a
fucking
second.
Something new. And
From the source of his camera is 15 to 20 miles away. So, Tommy, don't you think it would have to be significantly large to put out that much light?
Absolutely. Something that far away, something that big, and that's not a drone moving that way. And again, I mean, this is one of those videos that if we didn't know the source, we'd be saying, oh, maybe they're speeding it up or maybe they're playing with it. But that's not the case here, folks. We know this guy. Good guy. And, you know, yeah, I'll tell you, he gets the most interesting shots, and this is just one of them, folks.
And we've even interviewed him on the channel. So if you look back at some of our live streams, you'll be able to see him and listen to him.
Yep.
So this is a really credible video, yes. Okay, I'm going to play the end of it, and then we'll move on to the next one. What was that? Yeah, I don't have any clue.
In the fucking making.
Hey, videotape that shit. Dude, that shit is just That's a fucking video. Aliens.
It's an orb. I got an orb on video right now. Fucking orb.
What the fuck?
Unedited. Oh my god.
What the
Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. It's on the surface of the water. It's on the surface of the water. It's just skimming across the water right now. It's not above the water. It's on. Oh!
It just bloop and gone.
It's on. Oh! Not above the water. It's on. Oh!
Okay, what it's doing is diving below the water.
Pretty as you please. No splash, no. I mean, it doesn't even look like it's disturbing the water. It's just literally just melting right inside of the water. Look at that.
Right.
Bob Gray. I know, right? Oh, whoa, whoa.
The guy was going crazy, yeah. Okay, here's some footage filmed with a Nikon P1000 and a tripod. So the actual disc is moving on its own. The camera is still. Check this out. Now I will get closer so you can see it better.
Look at that. Looks metallic. It has the right reflection on it from the sun. I mean, look at that thing. From a stationary camera, no less.
Stationary camera, so this thing is moving.
There's a little bit of something around it if you look really closely, but I don't know if that's just distortion from its propulsion system or what, but there I do see like a hue around it.
Yeah, there's like an energy field. And here we go with some still shots a little closer. I'll stop it. That's what it looks like in the normal lighting.
The shadows are right. The reflections are right. Wow. Very interesting.
There, I darkened it a little bit so you could see the dark side. Now, somebody underneath the video when I posted it said it looked like a Tic Tac at an angle, which means that this here would be the side and this would be the round end. Now, it's a good theory, but we can't prove that.
Mm-hmm.
But it is very interesting.
Okay, man, I got a weird one. This one is above Sunrise Mountain over in the east. I've got the night vision on it as well. There are no red or green lights on this thing, and nothing is flashing. I mean, very strange, very strange. I mean, it's possible that it's coming straight at me. It looks like one of those lights is dimming. They got two yellow lights on the outsides and then a whiter light on the inside. And so I'm going to be going back and forth from the night vision camera. Wow, one of them's fading out. Wow, this is amazing, man.
This is also Stephen Barone, right?
It is above
Yes.
Sunrise
Yes.
Mountain, up in the sky. I'm shooting over the top of a roof, so that's why everything looks so dark. That is not an airplane. All right. This is cool. I'm going to straighten it out a little bit. That is not an airplane. I've got this thing on the tripod just holding still. What the heck is that? Let me go look at the night vision.
Amazing.
Yeah, the colors are amazing.
He just gets the best footage. He really does. The guy is just the master.
Well, whatever it isn't an airplane, and it's amazing. Never actually caught anything right there before.
He said this is by Sunset Mountain.
Seems to be moving left a little bit. You know, but if it was coming my way by now, those lights would have changed, become bigger, or...
I want to stop it for a second. Sunset Mountain is just beyond Vegas, Las Vegas, beyond the Nellis Air Force Base test range. So it's right over that direction, and that's what he's watching.
You know, now two of them seem to be merging. Now we've got two orange lights. Wow. Yeah, there's no flashing beacons on this.
Amazing, amazing footage.
It out again. Now I have two lights. What the heck?
We're not talking about flares. We're not talking about something falling to the ground here.
Air Force.
That's not what we're looking at, folks.
Not far at all. Now there's all three of them again. Definitely not an airplane, man. It wouldn't spread out like that.
Right. It would not.
Gosh. I love it when something new happens. Those two are leveling off now. We still got the two orangish ones on the outside and a lighter color one on the inside. And straighten it out again. I'm trying to do it as gently as I can. Man, the night vision's right on it. Oh, this is weird. This is awesome. I'm gonna straighten it out again. I don't have to move the night vision quite as much. Sorry, I'm just trying to get it centered. I wonder what these things are.
I agree with you, Dom. It's hard to say.
Definitely not helicopters either. It's still slowly moving to the left. I may end up having to move the camera because I told you I'm shooting over a roof.
Dom, Stephen Barone said that these are three separate objects. They're not one big object. So your statement would be correct.
And that roof has a chimney on it, and it may keep on going and get behind that chimney. This is incredible. Wow, look at that. Look at that. Unbelievable.
Also, the lights that you're seeing up in the right-hand corner in that box are two different forms of camera. So he's seeing them in the box up in the right, but he's also filming them in a different camera to the left.
This is why I do this, man. You know, this just looks like an ordinary light in the sky visually. But when I looked at it with my binoculars, I noticed it looked different. And it initially had kind of looked like an airplane, but there were no red or green lights. And nothing was flashing. And it's slowly moving to the left. I'm definitely going to have to move the camera here if it keeps on going that way. Yeah, I got that centered out again. Looks like two little fireballs, and then that one in the middle, it's almost like them, but lighter. Man, this is great. It's getting pretty damn bright. I mean, I can see that visually, but I could see where anyone outside that's looking at it would just think it was an airplane. This is fantastic.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to move it even more than halfway because it is moving left. The night vision's okay. As soon as it disappears, I'm going to go ahead and move it right now.
Hey guys, this is UFO Man. Here's a clip coming out of Argentina of what appears to be a cylinder vehicle up against the mountainside. It was estimated at being about 300 to 400 feet long. It made absolutely no sound, and there were about 5 to 6 witnesses. Take a look, make an assessment. Let me know what you think down below in the comments.
Well, we can write off things like blimps, air balloons, weather phenomenon. I mean, I don't think it's any of those things. It looks like a solid object just sitting in the air to me.
Right. And I'll get closer to it here in a minute. In this close-up of the footage, you can see the lights moving back and forth from right to left and the left to right. The vehicle seems to be flashing or pulsing.
Not something sitting on the mountain. That is definitely the exterior of the mountain.
It seems to be just hovering.
Yep.
Take a look, make an assessment, and as always, thank you for watching. Now I'm going to go back. Oops, I went back too far. Hold on.
It's getting pretty damn bright.
Here we go. It's kind of shaky footage, but you can tell the person filming it was quite nervous or just didn't brace their arm. One of the two.
And it's way outside the capabilities of their phone or whatever camera they're using. It looks like.
Close up of the footage, you can see the lights moving back and forth from right. What do you think of that, Tommy?
I think that we're looking at something that does not belong there. I think it's something that's hovering in the air. It's not a camera anomaly. It's not, you know, again, excited swamp gas or any other kind of weather anomaly. There's something there. I just wish we had a better look at it. I mean, I had no idea what it is.
I'll tell you what it looks like to me is there's an energy field in between the ends. So in between the bright left side and the bright right side, there's like a fluctuating energy field. That's what it almost looks like. Watch. You can see it waver, unless that's just the camera.
Could be the digital processor.
But it's a very large object.
Yeah, he's zoomed way out there. It's the very end of the capabilities of his digital zoom. And the difference between optical and digital zooms is that on an optical zoom, you're actually relying on the camera to tell you what it's seeing versus an actual optical zoom. That's your eye telling you what you see. There's the difference. Again, folks, always, whatever, like we always say, whatever camera that you're rocking in your pocket, go out to YouTube, look up a video on it, find out how to use it, and have that bad boy ready just in case you ever do run across something, because folks, it happens all the time.
Right, exactly. Okay, here's one coming out of Hachioji, Tokyo, Japan. Quite recent. Now, you can't see it right away, but it's like right here, hovering. But I will zoom in. Some people thought at first this might be a drone because the corner seemed to flicker, but according to the people, there was no sound, and it has an energy field all the way around it. Now I will zoom in closer. You can see there's an energy field all the way around the outside. All the way around the outside. And on a typical drone, you're not going to see that.
That is so strange. There's definitely something going on there. The camera's not liking what it's seeing.
I do know, right, and I do know, Tommy, that the object is stationary. Mm-hmm. Why the object's moving in the footage? Because the cameraman's moving.
Yeah. Interesting. Huh.
And that's the original footage. Again, it shows the frame of reference. So you can see it's just sitting there. Right there.
Very interesting. Huh.
Broad daylight, too. There it is one last time. There it is as a still shot. Then I ran it through a filter. You can see the energy field right here. That's why I did it this way. See the energy field around the outside?
Mm-hmm.
That to me is indicative of some type of anti-gravity propulsion or electromagnetic drive or something like that.
Definitely something going on there.
Como que é o... Olha aqui, ó, como que é o...
Nossa, dá pra ver. Dá pra ver perfeitamente.
Trying to remember where this is. Oh, this is over Campinas, Sao Paulo, Brazil.
Tá vendo?
Tô. Não é uma luz, é como uma porta, não é? Ele abre, ó.
Ai, gente.
Mano, que da hora, velho.
Que doideira, mano. Isso não é normal, não, mano. Eu tô fingindo.
Slightly moving, it looks like, maybe.
Yeah, it looks like it's moving back and forth, left to right.
Não é uma luz, é como uma porta, não é?
It looks kind of like it's moving left to right.
Like a pendulum, sort of.
And then it starts to go to the right and disappears behind the power pole. It almost looks like all the other ones that we've shown on the channel that look like a walnut.
Yep.
There it goes. Okay, here it is. Run through a filter. Oops. Oh, I guess we're done. Okay. Anyways, thank you very much for watching our UFO Man video review of the week. When Tommy gets done typing here, I can get his opinion on what he thought of the videos.
Great videos as always. I'll tell you, we get some great footage here. We're very fortunate. Stuff that sent to us. I mean, it's just, we're just immensely grateful for all of that. These were just another example of just some really great footage, some really awesome things that are just, they're in the sky. They're not supposed to be there. And again, all of a sudden we seem to have a government in the United States that's no longer in the whole denial to death mode. So, interesting. Okay, well, I have the current Fox News report in regards to the USS Omaha footage of the USO dipping down into the ocean. So let's take a look at that. Okay, here we go.
We've interviewed a number of experts on the show, people familiar with footage in the possession of the U.S. military, who have said there is tape out there of unidentified flying objects descending from the sky and then disappearing into the ocean. Well, today, that video emerged. The Pentagon has just confirmed that the footage is real. You're seeing it now on your screen. It was taken by the Combat Information Center aboard the USS Omaha on July 15th, 2019, off the coast of San Diego. As far as we know, the UFO in question was never recovered. There was no material indicating a crash. More than that, we don't know. Tom Rogan is a Washington Examiner columnist, well-versed in the subject. He joins us tonight. Tom, what do you think we're looking at here?
Well, I think we may well be looking at a true unknown, which is to say intelligently controlled machinery that is not understood to be in the possession of the United States, China, or Russia, which are the three most advanced countries in terms of military aviation. And so, you know, the video in and of itself is limiting what it can tell us, but I think it speaks to, as the Pentagon itself has admitted, this continuing trend of truly unexplained things coming into the public consciousness more than they have before.
If you listen to this with the sound up, you can hear the guys who are monitoring this video in real time gasp when it seems to disappear beneath the waves. So this kind of takes the weather balloon off the table or some meteorological phenomenon off the table. I mean, clearly we're looking at something that is, as you just put it, being intelligently controlled, and it's going underneath the ocean and then disappearing. I mean, we're sure that this could not be a foreign nation in control.
Yeah, that is the, yes, and that is why you see people like Senator Rubio leaning into the subject, the military Office of Naval Intelligence, which really leads the military effort researching this. There isn't anything that we have top secret information about what China or Russia have, or what we have at Area 51 that can do what these things do in terms of the variable performance. And I think specifically relevant to this video, in the coming months and years, an area which we will learn more about is the interaction of US Navy submarines, nuclear ballistic missile submarines and attack submarines, picking up sonar contact of things moving at hundreds of knots under the water. And so there is a undersea dimension to this that the Navy has sort of pushed off to the side as the pilots talk more about their experiences. So there's a lot more to come out, I think, is the best way to put it.
Hundreds of knots underwater. I mean, I think all of us can imagine objects moving at incredible speeds in the air, maybe even approaching, you know, the speed of light, potentially, but hundreds of knots underwater, I don't think most people can even digest that. That's been recorded?
That's what I've heard from sources, very good sources, and that the Navy has the data. And one of the big things, Tucker, that I think as we move towards this Director of National Intelligence report, and I do know that the various agencies are actually taking that more seriously than people might expect, as is DNI. One of the things we're going to find is that over a period of decades, a lot of the data, a lot of the measurement of these things has been put off as technical aberration or essentially a data malfunction, because they didn't want to really admit that something very serious and special is going on.
I mean, some of this behavior challenges our understanding of physics. So I think this is going to change a lot of perceptions. Tom, I appreciate it. I hope we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Tucker.
So that's very interesting. At least now we have the footage and not just the grainy picture. Now, people have been saying to me, why is the footage so blurry? Well, because they're using a FLIR camera, an infrared camera. They only unclassified the infrared footage. They did not unclassify the thermal footage and the 4K and 8K cameras that they have on board. Of course, that footage is classified.
Which they have, no question.
Yeah, we know they have it. It's just a matter of why can't we get it?
Right.
Does it show something that they don't want us to know? Obviously, that must be the case.
it must be so mind-blowing that they just feel that we can't handle it, or they're afraid it's an adversary. Who knows why that they're even giving us the grainy footage. If you're going to give us the footage, you might as well go ahead and give us the whole thing, or don't give us anything. I mean, why? It's like the Tic Tac video. The video that's been publicly circulated is a very grainy version of that. The sailors that actually were involved in that incident and have been interviewed many times, they said that the actual visual video of that is spectacular. That's not what we got.
Yeah, it's not what we got. Exactly. Okay, I'm going to play us a clip called Government UFO Sightings Uncovered. If it will come up, because right now it seems to be buffering. So we'll see what the deal is here.
Lights in the sky. It appears that you may be moving a little bit this way. Yes, it's right on past that. Bill, it's coming this way.
Check that out.
It is definitely coming this way. The pieces of it are shooting off. There is no doubt about it. This is weird. What is it?
Now that's an artist. That's an artist conception.
All of a sudden, the beam came down right to the side of us. And I'm thinking, is this a warning? Is this communication? Is this, what is this? You know, what do we do now?
There was something which he and his navigator saw, and his voice was quite shaky. He said, I don't know what it was, but on radar, it was climbing like the clappers.
These witnesses saw something real and solid. These are military witnesses, and these people, when they make a report like this and say, this is highly unusual, you can take that to the bank.
Inside the British Ministry of Defence, Nick Pope was cleared to read Britain's most closely held state secrets. As he was to discover, the ministry was sitting on its very own X-Files. In the early 90s, this former deputy director of the MOD was pulled aside to investigate the threat to British national security posed by UFOs. When you were asked to do it, did they sort of come up with a bit of a wry smile and say, I've got something for you, old boy?
I was effectively headhunted into that job. I was broadly sceptical. I certainly went in there having no expectation of finding little green men.
What Nick Pope found in those secret files was intriguing, but one incident left him questioning for the first time whether the truth really is out there.
The turning point was the Cosford incident. It was this point midway through my tour of duty where I came in one morning and the phones were ringing off the hook, and gradually throughout that day I put together this story of this amazing series of sightings that had occurred over a period of 6 hours.
On the night of 30th of March 1993, across southern England, reports flooded in of strange lights moving in a northeasterly course. They formed the outline of a massive black triangle. The most dramatic sighting that night was here around the Royal Air Force's Shawbury base in Shropshire. Multiple witnesses independently reported seeing not just lights, but a clearly structured black triangular craft which moved slowly overhead and then accelerated off to the horizon at impossible speeds. Now, the fact of this sighting is clearly recorded in the newly released Ministry of Defence files. But even more interesting, the investigators from the Defence Department were unable to explain that mystery, even to this day. Of all the accounts, the most compelling was filed by the on-duty meteorological officer at a nearby base.
He saw it initially move slowly towards the base, and he said it's very slow speed, maybe 30 or 40 miles an hour. And then he heard this low-frequency humming sound, which he said was quite unpleasant, rather like standing in front of a bass speaker. He said he could feel the sound as well as hear it. He saw this narrow beam of light firing down from the craft, and from this very slow speed, the UFO accelerated away to the horizon in seconds. And he described this to me as many times faster than a military jet aircraft.
And this is a credible military witness?
This is an Air Force officer with 8 years service.
And you believed it?
Absolutely.
Just there, it was moving in a northern direction, in the direction of RAF Shawbury. It was moving very, very slowly. The white light at the front, it was very erratic, emitting the light. And it was as if it was searching for something very, very slowly. And then I stood there for at least 2 or 3 minutes and watched it just move so slowly. And then all of a sudden, it just went off, just shot off, gone, boom.
This is the first time Darren Perks has publicly spoken about what he saw that night. In 1993, he was an Air Force cadet. His description matches exactly the one given by the RAF Met Officer.
Craft. It was defined against the sky. The sky was clear. The stars were right. This blocked out the stars. It was black, solid, triangular.
Neither myself nor my superiors at the MOD have any conventional explanation for what was seen. To this day, it's completely unexplained.
The British Ministry of Defence investigators even approached their American counterparts here in Washington, D.C. to ask them whether the US was doing any secret test flights in British airspace that might explain the spate of weird UFO sightings. The answer they got back from the Americans was even more intriguing.
They gave us absolutely cast iron assurances that there was no such craft.
Let's say it was of extraterrestrial origin. Why would ET fly billions of light years across the galaxy and park itself over a RAF base in England?
Speculatively speaking, if these things were alien, I guess their motives, it seems to me, would be scientific study.
But crucially, you concede it's a possibility that it was alien.
Forgive the politician's answer. I can't rule it out, but I guess in strictly logical terms, of course I can't.
He needs to get those shoes fixed.
There was something to the sightings. Nick Pope launched a cold case review of UFO activity over Britain dating back decades. And what he found was a surprising number of cases where the ministry had no rational explanation for what had been seen.
Well, this document here is pretty impressive. This is the Assistant Chief of the Air Staff being briefed on a UFO incident where an object was assessed as operating over the UK, completely unknown.
This was something which we had never seen before. We couldn't explain.
Alan Turner is long retired. But in 1971, he was wing commander in charge of an Air Force radar unit that went on high alert after multiple objects moving at impossible speeds and heights were tracked on his screens. Turner ordered a bomber pilot to try to intercept.
He admitted that there was something which he and his navigator saw, and his voice is quite shaky. He said, I don't know what it was, but on radar it was climbing like the clappers. We didn't see anything visually, but it was definitely on our radar.
Would you have spoken out about what you saw that night while you were with the RAF?
No.
Why not?
Professional integrity. I was told not to talk about it.
Colonel Charles Holt was also worried that revealing what he saw would kill his career.
Certainly wasn't career enhancing. How am I ever going to explain this? Nobody will believe this.
It was 1980, and Holt was the US Deputy Base Commander at the Bentwaters RAF Base in England. He was a senior officer, almost certainly controlling nuclear weapons, one rank shy of general, with 20 years' experience in the Air Force.
The on-duty flight lieutenant from the Security Police Squadron came in white as a sheet, and he said, it's back. What's back? He said, the UFO is back. He said, we saw something out in the forest we can't explain.
The night before, 2 of Holt's men had reported seeing, and one of them said he'd even touched a UFO with strange markings on the side. This time, Holt decided to see for himself. He gathered a large number of soldiers and headed into Rendlesham Forest. They had radios, lights, and military Geiger counters.
Took those things along just to disprove all of this stuff. I looked up and looked through the forest toward the coast and saw a glowing object. I can best describe it as looking something like an eye with a black center. It's moving like this through the trees, going up and down, avoiding the trees.
You use the word there, avoiding the trees. You're under the clear impression that this object was intelligently moving?
Definitely, it was under some type of intelligent control.
Holt also took a small tape recorder.
There it is again. Watch straight ahead off my flash right there. There it is. Hey, I see it too. What is it? We don't know, sir. So can I get some word? Yeah, it's a strange, small red light. Weird. You know, it's coming this way.
Crucially, this is an incident that's witnessed by maybe a dozen people?
Probably a total of 30 or 40 people.
5 of the people involved on the first night actually made formal statements, witness statements. Now, that would be a disciplinary offence if there was anything false in that.
Holt submitted his investigation to his superiors with its explosive conclusion that an unknown craft had been seen by dozens of military personnel near one of America's most sensitive foreign bases. His report was buried.
Do you believe that the US government or somebody in the US government knows more than they're letting on?
I suspect there's more than one agency that knows a lot more than what they're letting on.
I've met Charles Holt, and as far as I'm concerned, he's a very sincere and genuine and honest man. Just because he feels that he is certain about what he saw doesn't mean that there isn't any room for memory distortion or perceptual errors that were made at the time.
Professor Chris French is Professor of Psychology at the University of London and an arch UFO skeptic. How do you explain eyewitness testimony from credible witnesses? Well, no matter how convincing the account and how convinced witnesses are, he says the mind plays tricks. And the most powerful trick of all is that there is an overwhelming human desire to believe we are not alone.
I mean, to be perfectly honest, I'd love to believe. The idea that there is alien life out there, that we might make contact with it, that we might learn from it, is an incredibly exciting idea.
I looked up and saw this thing in the sky.
People very often will be influenced by what they think they might be seeing. And we have this very natural tendency to kind of fill in the gaps, both perceptually and in terms of memory.
There's no doubt in your mind, it's very real.
It is real. I know what I saw. I know what we saw.
From where you've been sitting inside the Defense Department, you haven't seen any evidence of a massive conspiracy. They're saying what they're saying because they just don't know.
There is no spaceship in a hangar anywhere in the United Kingdom. There's not some great smoking gun that's going to blow this whole secret wide open. No, the bottom line is we don't have a clue what these things are. Take the Gosford incident. There is some evidence to suggest that an unidentified object or objects was operating over the United Kingdom. That's about as close as the MOD will ever get to saying, yeah, these things are real.
It's always the shrinks that come out and say, oh, well, it's a perception. Okay, people are walking outside, they're getting photographs of things in the sky. That is not their mind's eye. That is not their perception. That means that they actually captured something on video. So how do you explain that? I mean, is that my camera's hallucinating? I don't think so. That's just ridiculous. And see, that guy is one of those skeptics that, I mean, a UFO could crash into his own swimming pool in the back of his house, and he still wouldn't believe it. He'd still find a way, oh, that must be experimental aircraft, and those little fellows that came out of there, oh, they're just dwarves. And, you know, they always have some kind of the swamp gas theory going on or whatever. You're never going to be able to convince them no matter what.
Right, and staunch skeptics will remain staunch skeptics, especially if they come from a scientific background. It seems like they want to use science as their religion rather than truth, which is what people are seeing out there.
Cameras do not hallucinate, folks. They just don't do it.
Hey, Tommy, can you bring up that report from Bolivia?
Sure can, Tim. Let me go ahead and bring it up. Folks, we've got something here that's a little bit unique. Let me pull it up here for you. This is something that, before I even get into this is just a story that we picked up on Coast to Coast. We thought it was interesting enough to actually talk about. So let me go ahead and read this for you, folks. According to Coast AM, residents of a village in Bolivia claim to have witnessed a UFO landing wherein the craft subsequently released a chupacabra-like creature into their community. The very strange incident reportedly occurred in the town of Montegudo, I think, earlier this month, when observers first spotted a puzzling halo of light appear in the sky and then descend to the ground. There was a crash like thunder, he recalled Bolivian UFO researcher Xavier Alegaya, I think, who indicated that the object appeared to be throwing fire, which, of course, we've heard this time and time again. My own experience, I've seen a craft that actually emitted some kind of a molten material that was, I mean, brighter than the sun, really. So they're doing that, and we've seen videos of this happening as well. Things even took an even weirder turn when those on the scene saw some kind of entity exit the craft. According to witnesses, this interstellar interloper stood approximately 1 foot tall and sported 3 fingers on each of its hands. The mysterious visitor is also said to have possessed very large eyes, yet was unable to see, although how exactly that was determined is uncertain. Upon exiting the craft, concerned residents claim the oddity proceeded to wander the streets, frightening children who were watching this all unfold. The creature, which many liken to the legendary chupacabra, eventually vanished into the night, and the craft that appeared to deliver it to Earth also disappeared. So they drop this thing off, it gets out of the craft, and the craft takes off. It's like they let it go. Like maybe it's an animal, maybe it's one of their people, who knows? But all that was left behind from the case were some curious impressions in the ground and several shaken residents. To that end, again, Alega was understandably called for a scientific investigation into the matter, though such an undertaking seems doubtful. When such an undertaking concerns, it seems doubtful. That said, the incident was intriguing enough that it was covered on the Telemundo program Al Rojo Vivo, which interviewed witnesses and showcased some of their drawings of the creature, as well as the markings reportedly left behind by the craft. So, I mean, this thing went as far as to get on Telemundo, which everybody knows in the Spanish world is a pretty big network. So they actually covered this. But in an intriguing turn of events, the Inspector General for the Department of Defense has announced plans to conduct an evaluation of how the Pentagon has responded to the UFO phenomenon. The forthcoming endeavor was revealed in a memo issued by the Oversight Office on Monday and quickly caught the attention of UFO enthusiasts when word of the decision spread throughout the community on Tuesday morning. The announcement from the IG somewhat vaguely states that they intend to determine the extent to which the DoD, Department of Defense, has taken actions regarding unidentified aerial phenomenon, UFOs or UAP. So in other words, what they're talking about is what is the investigation into the DoD. And again, this isn't an investigation on whether UFOs exist or not. It's an investigation on how the information's been collected, how these sightings were actually investigated, and things of that nature. So that's good. I mean, in other words, they're trying to lift the veil here of the crap that the government's been feeding us for decades at this point. You know, swamp gas and so forth.
That information is due in August.
Right, exactly. So we've got one big report supposedly coming out on or about the 1st of June, which, remember, folks, we've got a special that night.
Right.
Hopefully that's going to tell us something, or they're going to show us something that we've never seen before. hopefully, because this actual action has been signed into law, they'll actually have something on the 1st. But knowing the U.S. government, no one's really sure. Anyway, so basically that's where we're at with this story, folks. Again, it's one of those things that we're not real sure if it happened or not, but we just thought, since it was an interesting story, since it was covered by Coast to Coast AM, we thought, what the heck, we go ahead and throw it out there and see what you folks thought about that. Anybody have any thoughts? I really believe chupacabras existed. It could very well be. They have found some strange creatures out there.
Although I have to say something about that. The pictures they've showed of a hairless dog is not a chupacabra. That's a fallacy. That's a falsehood. The ones that they're saying is a chupacabra is something like what I put up there a little while ago. Spiny back, large eyes, long tongue, three fingers on each hand, long claws, that type of thing.
I know that the photo that you're talking about of the dog, and I'm pretty sure that I read where they finally did a DNA test on it, and I think they came up with coyote with mange or something, like a real serious.
Yeah, it was a dog breed. Yeah. Exactly. But a lot of people were claiming that was the chupacabra for a long time.
Yep. That shrink that we had on the last video, he's right in a way, and that people do tend to distort things that they see to fit their own personal narrative. In other words, if they want to believe something is true, their mind will tend to lay out scenarios where that could be a possibility. But again, cameras really don't lie, and they don't have personalities. They don't have personality issues. They just record what they see.
Right, exactly. We do have a clip here from the late Robert Dean, suggesting that there are 4 significant races that are walking among us that could pass for human, to the point where you would not recognize them if they were sitting next to you in a theater. So let me play that clip.
They represented something far beyond anything I had ever imagined before. When the study was concluded in '64, they concluded that there were 4 different groups apparently coming and visiting us. Out of those 4 different groups, one group looked exactly like we do, so much so that they could sit beside you in a restaurant or in an airplane or in a theater, and you'd never know. And that particular point bothered the military guys a lot. The point being that some of these people from somewhere could be walking up and down the corridors of SHAPE headquarters, or they could be walking up and down the corridors of the Pentagon.
Infiltrators.
One day at lunch, a lieutenant colonel made the remark, he says, Jesus, do you realize they could even be in the White House? And there was a little forced laughter at that point, I remember, because a lot of us over the years have had some misgivings about the occupants of the White House. But the point I'm making is that the idea that aliens could be here in our midst bothered the military, because if you're not paranoid when you go into the service, you're certainly trained very quickly to be so. It's the nature of the military mind, I think, to be paranoid. But that was only part of the story. The SHAPE conclusions in '64 was that there were 4 groups that we knew of. They were apparently interplanetary. Some very likely were interstellar. They even concluded that some of them could be intergalactic. When I retired in 1976, many of our military people knew at that point that we were not simply dealing with visitations from people from other planets or star systems. They had concluded by '76 that some of these visitors very well might be multidimensional in their source. The evidence that we had collected and the evidence that they had repeatedly demonstrated to us, and that's no accident. It became very clear after a time that there was a program or a process of some kind underway, that they had demonstrated over and over and over again that they apparently were able to manipulate matter and time. Now, this really shook up our scientists. There are a lot of new young scientists in particle physics today who talk about multiple dimensions.
Okay. What he was suggesting is that we have 4 significant races that are here that are humanoid nature that are walking among us. Now, I have heard of at least 3 that I have some pictures of. This here is the well-known picture of a Nordic or a Pleiadian alien. Can pass for human, but they have white hair and bright blue eyes. So they've had to dye their hair and to put on foundation to blend in because their skin is so pale. Otherwise, they would stand out and be noticed. Another group is known as the Orions. They look a lot like the Nordics, but with more of an alien face, larger eyes. They wear contact lenses because their eyes are almost totally blue, no whites. Their hair is white. They have to dye their hair, and their teeth are larger, so they have to wear dental bridges.
Weren't these the folks that were involved in that California thing, Tim?
Yeah, these here, the Orions there was supposedly a rogue colony of Orion refugees living in Paradise, California. And during the fires of a couple years ago, where Paradise, California was virtually immolated by fire, where people in cars were caught, people were caught running to their cars and incinerated in their driveway. This town was supposedly the habitation of a large rogue group of these Orions, and the Orions were talking about coming public with their information and letting the public know that they were there, where they were from, etc., and so forth. And some of the emergency response teams that replied to the fire, responded to the fires to put it out, actually saw beams of light coming from space as if the fire was started on purpose. So it almost seems like there is a theory out there that they were destroyed in that area so that they would not come out with the truth. Now, I do know for a fact that there is an underground base underneath Paradise, California, and several of them tried to escape through the tunnels. I don't know how many, but there is a video out on YouTube that you can watch about this called Paradise, California. Check it out, watch it, then come back on another live stream and let us know what you think. All right, another group that we know about are these, the black-eyed children. Now, a lot of people seem to think that the black-eyed children are demonic, and that could very well be. But there is another theory going around that they are alien gray human hybrids. The alien grays are known for having lack of emotion, devoid of any human feeling, so that when you see them, they have a blank stare. And when you see someone with black eyes, if I saw someone with black eyes like that, if I didn't know they were contacts, I'm sure I would find it quite upsetting as well. Well, anyways, these are supposed to be alien gray human hybrids, and there are quite a few of them, adults and children alike.
And that certainly seems to be the Greys' MO. I mean, they're definitely geneticists. That's what they're into. Whatever they're doing, they're definitely fooling with genetics and DNA at this point.
Right, exactly. And we're doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very intriguing in the idea that if you could go down to the local theater and sit down next to someone that, say, has really blonde hair with bright blue eyes and really pale white skin, who knows? Maybe they're from the Pleiades, but you just don't know, and they're just blending in. And like Tommy said, maybe they're infiltrators.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, just to go to the realm of make-believe for a moment, let's look at Star Trek, okay? I mean, again, this is obviously make-believe. It's a television show, but think about the methodology behind it. They find a planet they don't want to actually make contact with, but they want to learn about it. So what do? They get clothing of whatever these people are wearing. A lot of times they'll have themselves surgically altered to make themselves look like the population, and they go there and they observe. Now, that seems like a pretty good way to get to know a people that you don't know.
Right, exactly. Blend in.
Yeah. So, I mean, why wouldn't they go for that tactic, I guess is the question,
Now, Tommy, weren't you saying to me earlier that you thought there was a security guard at the White House security force that looked awful reptilian in nature?
There is a Secret Service agent out there, and I don't want to dump on the guy. I'm not trying to do that or anything. I'm not trying to belittle anybody that works for the Secret Service. I think they're doing a great job and all of that. However, there is one agent in particular. He was always very close to Trump. Big guy, bald guy. And there's just something about him that just looks off. I mean, he just doesn't look normal to me. And again, don't know his name. Of course, nobody does. I mean, Secret Service. But I mean, if you ever get to see this guy, and you can go out and look at some videos of Trump and all of that, and when he was arriving and leaving places, and you'll see this guy. And when you see it, it's like, I mean, it's weird. There's something off about him. I don't know.
Yeah, when I saw him, he kind of looked lizard-like. If you remember the last movie of Harry Potter, where Voldemort is showing himself, the way his head was shaped with the snake-like eyes and the long chin, that's what that security guard looks like.
Yeah, I mean, there's something, his shape of his skull. I mean, it's just something off about him.
Yeah, and I guess there are stories out there that the reptilian bloodline runs through a lot of the elitist groups, including the Bushes and I want to say the Bush family and not the Reagans or the Clintons, but the Bush family and possibly even the Queen of England and her royal line. So, and the story of dragons and things of that nature go way back in several different countries and ideologies. So who knows? Maybe that is actually the truth. Maybe we've been infiltrated from the beginning.
All ancient fiction is usually rooted in some kind of fact.
Right, exactly. Tommy, any last thoughts?
Well, folks, I think we had a great show. Really appreciate everybody for coming out. Great show again. We've covered a lot of things here. Hopefully we're all going to keep our fingers and our toes and anything else we've got crossed on this report that's going to be released supposedly by law on June 1st. Again, we'll see what happens. Either way, folks, we're going to have a great special right here on the show. We've got an all-star lineup for you. You're going to love it. Make sure you come see us.
Tommy, you mind if I tell them who the all-star lineup is so far?
Go for it.
We have Michael Mazzola, the director of Close Encounters of the Third Kind and Unacknowledged, the two movies he did for Stephen Greer. We have Ryan Stacy from TESSA, the Experiencer Association. We have Terry Lovelace, the gentleman we interviewed for Abduction at Devil's Den. They're going to be here. We've invited Ted Rowe from NARCAP, and we've also invited Carrie Cassidy from Project Camelot, and we've invited Stephen Barone from UFOs Over Vegas. So if you can be there, we're sure to have a good roundtable, even if we don't get the information that we want. Another thing, please don't forget to visit our website at www.ufomannetwork.com. We would appreciate your visit, and the more that you visit, the higher ranking we get for our website and the higher listing we get for our YouTube channel on Google. So please visit often. And I want to thank everybody in the chat room for coming this evening, and I want to thank everyone who has participated online. So everyone, please have a good evening.